Hello and welcome back to Boardroom Insights with Alan O'Neill. Now, regular listeners, you'll know that I normally work with large, well-established, mature companies, but I'm always fascinated by startups that literally start up from a blank sheet of paper. I'm curious about the motivation behind the idea, the R&D behind it, how it came to market, how people get switched on to the whole thing, and how the leader and the founder can motivate everybody behind his or her great idea. Today, I'm joined by one such company based in Galway. The company is called Symphysis Medical. So we're going to be hearing a lot about the biomedical space in particular, but more so, we're going to hear about startups and the journey that our founder has taken the business from beginning to where it is. I'm joined by founder and managing director, Tim Jones, who with a name like that is obviously a Welshman. So let's look forward to the Welsh lilt as we chat through the story of Symphysis. Tim, you're very, very welcome. How are you today?
Thanks very much, Al. Yeah, good. It's great to be on your show. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And I really am looking forward to your story. And tell me, what is it that Symphysis does? Let's just start there, Tim.
I kind of just, I only want to reflect on something you started on because it just made me stop for a second. You were saying about when a company starts from nothing. And it reminded me of a conversation I had with one of our board recently when they said, what you've done from scratch is really impressive. So when I think about it was that very moment where we are sitting down and thinking, can we do this? And going back all the way through that journey, it was a real reflective moment for me, realizing that the business we have all built to date was just from that small scrap of paper. So it was just the words you used there remind me of it.
Really?
At Symphysis, we're a medical technology company. We were born out of the BioInnovate program, which is a needs-led innovation program looking for unmet clinical needs that will service patients that can't currently get an optimal treatment or can't get a treatment at all in certain areas. So what we do is we treat one of the most common complications of late-stage cancers, which is a buildup of fluid in the chest. Our device is an implantable that goes in the chest, enabling them to drain at home independently. And it's all about offering a choice for them at a very difficult time in their lives where they have approximately 3 to 12 months left to increase their independence and improve their quality of life at a time that really matters most.
So this is a device, when you say it goes into the chest, so tell us a bit more about the mechanics of that.
Yeah, so if we kind of look at what's currently on the market now, and we can compare to that. So currently, basically a tube goes into the chest, and there's about a 30 centimeter tube that comes outside the chest. And that is still an implantable, and that's put into the patient in a procedure in the hospital. It takes approximately 45 minutes, and on a lot of occasions, they can leave the hospital that day. When they do go home, they have to manage the tube and a load of dressings on top of it, which necessitates a public health nurse and a loved one supporting them at home. So as soon as they're diagnosed with the condition, they have a repeat buildup of fluid, which means that you can have about 750 milliliters to a liter every day building up in that space, which causes debilitating breathlessness for these patients. And to give an example, someone might be sitting at home, just getting up and walking across the room can be very difficult, and that breathlessness is all encompassing. So it's important to be able to treat that, to alleviate the breathlessness. But in our case, rather than a public health nurse and a loved one supporting them, they can do it themselves. So everything that we've done with the development of the device over the last 7 to 8 years is enabling the patient to do that independently. And all the testing, all the usability studies, all the validation is ensuring that when we get to market, which is approximately 12 months from now, we really do know that the patients can do it themselves.
Okay, so this is a machine that it replaces the current methodology, which is, does this mean the patient has to go into a hospital every single day currently, or can they do something at home
So they can still do it at home. So what I'll say about the current technology is it really does help the patients. So it has been transformative. This was 25 to 30 years ago that it enabled them to go home. So
Right.
before the current devices, which is called an Indwelling pleural catheter, the clinicians performed a procedure called chemical Pleurodesis.
Okay.
So what you would do is you go into the space with a talc slurry, and it effectively it burns the space inside. It can be very painful for patients, but it stops that fluid recumulating. So it stops that potential space between the lung and the chest wall from opening up and allowing fluid to come in. So by burning that space, it stops the overproduction of fluid on the parietal pleura. And then it means that in about 7 to 10 days at the time, they could go home out of hospital, but they did need a long hospital stay. So back in 1997, 1998, this technology came out, an indwelling pleural catheter, and it enabled patients to go home. So that is amazing. So that all of a sudden does change things drastically for the patient and enables them to be at home with their loved ones more often.
Okay.
But the limitation of that technology is they need so much support. So when we were on the BioInnovate program, we saw this technology. We've seen that it hadn't been changed in so long. At the time, 25 years, we knew there was an opportunity to do more for these patients that deserved so much more. And we saw where the opportunity was. And that really was around the independence piece. So if we can give patients the choice to drain themselves, that's a huge difference to them in their final days. And
Gotcha.
It's never about saying this is how you do it. All patient care is holistic to a degree. So it's what does that patient need? Every patient needs something slightly different. But for this technology that we're offering, it's giving them a choice. So in some cases, some of the patients prefer their family to come around and support them on a daily or every other day. And that's a wonderful touch point with them and their families. But what this does is it takes that anxiety away because they know they can do it if they want to, or if
and
they
it gives them
need
choice,
to.
is your point.
And
Right.
it's a choice.
Tim, I'm curious about the device itself. I know you said as a tube goes into the chest, but it attaches to a device. Talk us through, and just keep in mind, some of our listeners are not seeing what you're going to show me.
Yeah.
So maybe describe to me the device itself.
Absolutely. And I'll describe it again as a comparison. So with the current technology, there's about 30 centimeters of tube that's inside the space that enables you to access that fluid. And there's about a 30 centimeter portion outside of the space. And the patients currently need to coil that up and put a whole load of dressings on top. With ours, we take away that external tube. So a huge part of the burden for the patients and their loved ones is the management of that tube externally. So what we have here is this is a simulation skin model. So this block, that's all just a model that we have
Simulation,
to show what the actual device looks like on the side of the body. So this is representing the chest wall. And the device is this low profile. So you can see it's just
it's like a button. It's like a button, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What we look at here is basically it's an all-in-one port access to the pleural space. So there's a multitude of things that the clinicians can do with this because it just enables them to access that space. And when the patient goes home after the insertion of the device, all they need to do is take off this hygienic cap. They then attach, like you were saying, the device, the more electronic part of it. That clicks into place. That's on a swivel so that when they're moving around, it doesn't get uncomfortable for them. And then that comes to the other side, and the other side is our drainage hub. So inside here, we have a drainage bag. There's no contact at all with the bag, with the fluid. So the fluid goes into the bag. Once the drainage is complete through just a one-touch operation, then you take the bag out, you drain it, and then you go on to the next drainage the next day or the day after, depending on symptoms. So this is why it really becomes more of an independence piece, because we've completed studies to show that this, just taking that off, putting a new sterile cap on at the end, is very straightforward for the patient cohort that will initially get this device, which is typically the over 65s.
Amazing, amazing. And it's mobile as well, if that was of interest.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
And that's other studies that we've done is the comfort of it. So how
yeah.
do you feel it? Within a few minutes, you don't even know it's there.
Right.
The hygienic cap is secure. It's easy to take off, but also secure. So that's all of the nuances of the development that we do to ensure that the device can be used
Yeah.
safely and effectively, and
And
in a way that really does enable them to do everything themselves.
and of course with the diabetes patches they're 24 hours, 24/7, but this is this only as it's needed that they plug in.
Exactly, only as
Right.
it's needed when they plug in. So that the dressing itself can stay on for a week, and then they change the dressing. The hygienic cap changes every single time that they drain, but there's
Yeah.
no burden to actually do that for drainage, and they only need to drain when they're instructed to by the clinician.
Right.
So there's some drainage regimes that they say, can you drain every day because it'll be
Yeah.
more beneficial to you and the space will dry up quicker, or it's every other day because they feel that the burden of draining every day might be too much for them,
Okay.
or it's only on symptom relief. So that's
Right.
again, it's a case by case basis. They get the feedback from the patient, see what they're able to do, and
Okay.
in general, about 75% of these patients are able to do all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And with current technology, less than 5% actually do. And in reality, those 5% that are doing it themselves possibly shouldn't be, because they're increasing the potential of infection around that
I
area,
see.
because handling it is so very difficult.
Gotcha. Amazing. And you've mentioned testing a number of times and feedback a number of times, and we're going to come to that. But tell me, I'm really curious about the origination of this idea. You've mentioned the BioInnovate program, which I know nothing about. But
Yeah.
tell me, clearly, this came out of an idea or a need. How did you identify the need in the first place, Tim?
So the needs-led program, which is based on the BioDesign process, is all about initially just shadowing. So you go into hospitals for an eight-week period and you just observe. So you observe the patient pathway, you observe what clinicians are doing, what patients are doing, what nurses, everybody on that patient pathway, you just make notes. And what was beneficial about the program as well, and where they put each of the teams, is it might not necessarily be your specialist area. So I came from Medtronic, and I worked in structural heart and coronary. So that's where my experience was in medical devices.
Oh,
And
right.
on the BioInnovate program, I was straight into respiratory, and that's in the interventional pulmonology side of it. You know, all those kind of complex interventional procedures.
Yeah.
So I'm going in with completely fresh eyes. I can't be biased by my previous education, specifically in that area, and that helps.
Well, of
The
course,
of
you
what we
just
observe.
preconceived ideas, or indeed.
Yeah, and if we look at the actual process, truthfully, we're sitting there as a team of four. So there's a commercial specialist, there's a scientific specialist, engineering specialist, and a clinical specialist. So we've got a
Yeah.
nice multidisciplinary team working together, observing these and then filtering through. But in reality, all of us are getting together, learning a new area. So we had clinical training specifically in that area by our lead clinician, Dr. David Breen at the time, and everything just goes straight over our heads. So
Yeah.
we are being taught as if we are one of his fellows, and we have to absorb all of this as we're going whilst observing things in the hospital, which is extremely tricky. So, it's going in, but not to the degree that you learn it all, then observe. It's learning as you're observing. So, like I said, the benefit then is you're making a huge amount of notes. You don't know what is important, what's not important. You're just observing things, writing it all down, and then learning specifically about the area over that 8-week period. And at the end of that 8-week period, then we're able to start a filtering process. So
Yeah.
we have knowledge in the space at that point, only a little bit, still only 8 weeks worth of learning. But we can then apply filters like, does this improve the patient experience? Does this improve the clinician
Right.
experience? How
Right.
big
Okay.
is this problem? And through a continued filtering process over a 10-month period, you ultimately come to one of these observations that's turned into a need statement that essentially then turns into something that you believe that you can make a major difference in.
And during that observation period, do you get access to interview people? Are the clinicians on the one side, but also the patients?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a real skill also that you develop. So, I mean, the skill of listening is something
Yeah,
that I think all of us
it's special.
are continuing. We're always developing it. As long as you're open to it, we're never going to be a perfect listener. But if
Yeah,
you're always there trying to develop that skill, then it'll only be to your benefit in the long term. So that's something that we have to apply at the start. But then, you get better and better at listening. So you read the room, you
yeah,
understand when is the right time to talk to a clinician,
right.
when is the right time or appropriate time to talk to a patient.
Yeah,
And every situation is different. So some patients are going through palliative care. Some patients are just in for the day and out for one procedure. It's all about the appropriateness of when to have those conversations. And it was very much learning the team and gaining trust with them at the start was really important before we were really able to sit down and say, can we talk about this? We think this was quite
yeah,
an important observation. And I will say that one thing is that how you do that is key to those relationships that you build, because when you're in the hospital and you're you're shadowing someone right over their shoulder constantly, at the start they're kind of going, oh,
Oh, not you again.
it's what some people will feel the pressure, and some people
Yeah,
will feel, do we have to do this? I've got a busy
right.
enough day already. And those are the kind of things that you really have to understand, or kind of
Manage the
broker with
dynamic.
the team to say this
Mm.
is going to be meaningful at the end, and this is what we're trying to do.
Yeah, yeah. And as you watched it, to the team of four of you, at what point did you find you were pretty much on the same direction of travel with an idea? Because was it an aha moment, or was it as a result of you guys going off for coffee and downloading what you observed? I mean, give me a sense of that,
Yeah,
that trigger point.
I think, yeah, that's a really good one, because it's different for everybody. And right at the start of the program, the mantra is trust the process. So you
Yeah,
you have to
I
trust
get
the
it.
process to kind of lead you there, rather than you be gung ho at seeing something and going, that's what we need to go after.
Right.
So you really have to open a drawer, put in something that you really like, close it, and carry on following the process. And
Yeah.
it's not easy. And there's no doubt that this particular need that we're tackling now was one of those ones that I looked at and just kind of went, this is very interesting. And I really want to explore this, but I'm going to have to be fair to the team, fair to the process. And, I'm doing this for 10 months. I'm not going to come here and project my own needs on this program. I have to follow the process. So
Mm.
did open the drawer, closed it. And ultimately,
Oh,
when we
sorry,
got,
Tim. Hold
yeah,
on. Are you saying that you had some inkling of the idea before you got into the program?
no, at the start of the program.
Okay.
So when
Right.
when I first observed the procedure, I kind of went, surely this can be a lot
Cumbersome.
better. And
Right.
to be honest, that's not me having any major insights. That's just me looking at the procedure. I
Yeah.
didn't know anything about the disease state at the time. I didn't know anything about the size of the problem and the magnitude of the problem. It was just something that I thought that can be improved. Now, if
Right.
we can improve that, what knock-on effect could it have on everything else? And that's what we do as a team, is really honing in on that whole business case of, if we tackle this area, how big of a problem is it? How much of a difference? What are the USPs of the device, and how much of a difference will it make for the patients?
Yeah.
How much easier will it make it for the clinicians? How much saving can you have for the healthcare system? And pulling all of that together is crucial to see, can you actually build a business, or can you create something that's going to develop the product or the system to better the patient experience? And I think
Right.
that's important as well, is that the BioInnovate program isn't there to create a company. It's there to identify unmet clinical needs and to find the best pathway to the patient. So that might be by building a company, or it might be by just partnering with a clinician and working on something separately, or it might be research. It might be some
Yeah.
significant clinical research in that area, or early research that's going to inform something
Okay.
that will change the landscape.
And we'll come back to the commercials, because that's going to be equally fascinating. But just to stay with the process of discovery or identification of the issue. You said that you saw it, something just didn't quite feel right to you when you initially spotted it. You put it in the drawer so as not to influence the team. But at what point did you all converge?
So we
How did that happen?
converged after we got down. So to give you an idea, the observations were around about 1,500. So like a list of 1,500 observations that we saw in clinical practice in the Mayo Clinic in Rochester and in Galway University Hospital and Cork University Hospital in Ireland. So, two very different systems. Mayo Clinic have all the resources in the world, and it's a high-end centre. And then obviously we're challenged here from a resources and a funding perspective in our hospitals in Ireland. So we kind of put it in that the bucket of we have a shared need in the haves and have-nots. So it seemed that going through the process down to our last 10, so you filter down from about 1,500 observations to approximately 300 more refined need statements, then down to about 20 where you're doing deep dive research, and then you're getting into the really kind of more fleshed out assessment of the landscape of each of those unmet needs. Ultimately, in our instance, we came down to 4 that we felt that we had an opportunity to initially develop a device and grow a company. It all fell down to the need in malignant pleural effusions because of the market size, the effect on the patient, the effect on the clinicians, and the fact that there's been no change in that procedure for over 25 years. And one thing that I will say is for sure is this is where the BioInnovate program really comes into its own. You have a device that's been on the market for 25 years in a major medical device company that has about 80% of the market share. So that's selling well, and nobody is really coming in.
Yeah.
And even now, after 25 years, that they still have that kind of market share. So where is the identification internally there to change the device or to develop the device?
Right.
And then you look at the patient and the clinician side of things. The clinician has a multitude of procedures that they do. This is only one of them.
Right.
So can they really understand what the patient need is at home? They don't have a huge amount of insight into that. And then the patient is, really going in at a very difficult time in their lives and not thinking, how do I feed back about what this device is? So it all falls through the cracks. So that's why there's been no development in this space for so long. And other companies that have come in, they've made Me Too devices, very much the same as what they are, and they have a small amount of market share, but there has been no identification of a need to change. And that's what the BioInnovate program did for us. It enabled us to talk to the patients, talk to the clinicians, understand those challenges that they were having, that the conversations weren't even being had.
Amazing. So it's not just then another company developing a Me Too version of the same thing. It's real disruption. And tell me, this BioInnovate program, who is behind that and where has it started? I know nothing about it. Tim, tell me about it.
Yeah, so it came about in 2011. Now, it was heavily supported by industry and Enterprise Ireland. It's very much, to look at that product development, the unmet clinical needs. It's based off the Stanford BioDesign process, which was around, I'll be honest, I don't know how much longer that was around before it, but they wanted to bring that methodology to the University of Galway, develop technologies, and really build on the strength of the MedTech ecosystem here in the west of Ireland. And that's where I saw it. I got into MedTech in 2010, where I did a medical device innovation course, a degree in medical device innovation. And I saw an advert for the BioInnovate program, and I thought, wow, this is what I want to do. This is exactly what I want to do. But I'm only new here. I don't have enough to give to be a real member of this team. So I was fortunate enough to get a job in R&D in Medtronic, and after 5 years there, I knew that I was ready to go into the BioInnovate program.
Amazing!
I'm very fortunate to get on that program after I think it was about an 8 6-hour interview process
Oh,
in one
right.
day. Very enjoyable, I have to say.
Yeah.
But
But
to,
I
to get
get,
on that
Tim, why
program.
it'll be so exhaustive. I do get that, because this is very serious stuff. And if the BioInnovate are selecting from quite a pool of people, I'm sure they have they have they have the right to be selected, don't they?
They absolutely do. And if you think
Mm.
about it, it's kind of a boot camp, very small
Yeah,
boot camp, but for what you should expect in the future. So
right.
if you have to go through that and you find that exhausting or overwhelming, or any of those things that really kind of put you off it, then
Yeah,
the journey on a startup is probably not for you. So
right.
I thought it was an exceptional process, and I was
Okay.
very fortunate to get on the program and
So
excited.
Tim, let's move on to the next stage. So right, we've got something where the team has converged. We know we've got an idea, but you now have a device sitting on your desk in front of you. So let's plug the gap between the idea being having value and you getting it to where I know you're still pre-revenue, but you've got a device sitting in front of you and you've got energy and momentum behind you to take this to the market. Let's plug the gap in there now. What happens along the way?
Yeah, I think just to bridge the gap as well, the one thing I probably do have to highlight is, for me personally, passion in this area is really important, and it's the passion that drives me through all of the ups and downs of developing a device, building a team, developing a technology in a market that's going to be challenging, raising funds, and everything that you need to have in the medtech
But
industry.
I suspect much of that passion was driven by the empathy, because I can't imagine 8 weeks observing unfortunates going through this late stage cancer with a terminal illness must have broken your heart many, many times. And
And
that could, Hmm. Okay,
that's exactly what it was. So when we had the other three needs that I was talking about, I didn't have the passion for them. It was the
right.
patience that really got me wanting to put my time and energy and effort into this area.
Yeah,
Sitting down next to a patient in Galway that had just had, the chemical pleurodesis procedure I was talking about a little bit
yeah,
earlier, where they insufflate talc into the space. So they had a procedure a few weeks back before I sat down with her, and it was unsuccessful. And it is unsuccessful, about 40% of the time.
oh
So,
dear.
it's a significant issue with that particular option for these patients.
Yeah,
But I was sitting down next to her, and she was to go through it again. What she's sitting down thinking about at the time, this is after talking to her now, is I've just had a procedure. It was extremely painful and it wasn't successful. So her level of anxiety over the anticipation of the pain and the concern over it not working again was very high. And you
Mm.
can't help but feel that in every aspect of
Compassion, of
your
course.
body. You
Mm.
can't.
Mm.
So seeing that amongst all of the other patients that we talked with, it was immediately something that I was very, very drawn to. And
Right.
not not trivially either, the fact that these patients at that time that are getting the current technology are willing to sit down with us to tell them of their experience, to sit down in a cafe for an hour and a half to talk about their current experience, to help others that will get a
Yeah.
device that will be so much better than what's currently available. That is
Okay.
humbling. So they have, very short amount of time left, and they are giving us the time to make it better for patients in the future. And that's something that really hit me.
I think there's a message here, if you just step out of the world of biomedical for a moment, Tim, because clearly the higher purpose of your organization is to make life somewhat easier for an unfortunate population, cohort of people. And that passion, that compassion and empathy is at the deep root of your raison d'etre, your reason for being, which is amazing and fantastic and is unlikely to ever leave the organization. But there are many, many traditional legacy type organizations out there who are selling widgets and there's no life threat, there's no discomfort per people. But at the same time, I think there's a message in here for anybody listening, Tim, that to find that pain point that you're satisfying a need, I accept it mightn't be medical. I accept it mightn't be around comfort, but within your organization to go back to your roots and to just remind yourself of what pain are you easing for your customer. It might be around deliveries. It might be around something very, very practical and non-medical, as I said. But I think there's a message in there. Back to you again, Tim. So just continue with that bridging between the eureka moment and then going to market.
I think what you just stumbled on there, though, is really on point, because it's that the patient needs is something that you identify at the start, but years have gone by, and when we're always listening to the patients and we're always listening to the clinician, those needs develop. It's not always what you think it is at the start, and even from year 1 to year 3. We realized that this device wasn't about reducing the amount of time that it's in the body and drying up that space as quickly as possible. It was about the independence piece. That's something that initially, you're reading medical papers and a lot of them are comparing one device to the chemical pleurodesis and the time it takes for that fluid to resolve, and saying that's important. And we're obviously heavily influenced by that. But then you realize that that's only one part of it, and it's not as important as the independence piece.
And there's a hierarchy of needs, isn't that right?
There's a hierarchy of needs, and it goes like this. It's not always fixed. So that prioritization can jostle. And that is something that you'll only ever stay on top of if you continue to stay abreast of all the technological development in our space and the clinical the clinical work that the key opinion leaders are going through to understand what those needs are from the hospital and the patient perspective. And from our perspective as well, continuing those conversations with the key opinion leaders who we've got a very good relationship with globally, that's identified well outside of the initial indication of malignant pleural effusion, is that there's all these other things that we can do with our technology. And that's not us pushing a technology out there, which, in a lot of industries is someone comes up with an idea, it's a eureka moment, and they push it. The device is then, right, where can we put this? This is all driven from the needs up. So when the clinicians come back to us and say, well, have you thought about doing this with it? And what about this? Then you realize, well, this is so much greater than what that initial idea was. And that's where we're at now is, moving outside of malignant pleural effusion. We've got non-malignant pleural effusion. We've got the treatment of a buildup of fluid in the abdomen called Ascites. And our technology can be used in so many other areas. And that's what we need to do, is maximize what we can do with our technology.
Well, it really is going back to that point you made earlier about listening. It's listening to learn, isn't it? Listening to understand and learn.
Very much, yeah.
So move us on then. And I'm sorry for returning to the commercial stuff, but this is a Boardroom Insights show. But let's hear a bit more about the commercials and how all that, like, you've got a device, you had an idea, you now have an actual device in your hand. I'm curious about that.
Yes. So when we come out of the BioInnovate program, the most important thing is, have you got a business case here? Because the project, whatever that is, it might not be a company, but the project needs to get funded. And it can only be funded if it has long-term legs and you have the ability to deliver the product to the patient. So we go through the mapping out of the whole process from product development right the way to commercialization and rollout of the product. And at the time, it's our best guess. We don't have all the experts in the room. We have advisors, exceptional advisors on the BioInnovate program and through the ecosystem in Galway, where we have ex-founders of companies that have gone through the process and been acquired, and then they can impart their knowledge onto others. So, we try and draw that experience and that knowledge to help define what is going to make us successful in developing the product, growing the company, and rolling out the product to the patient. Because the patient is first in everything we do. So if we can't get the product to the patient, then everything else is meaningless. So it's so important that we map that out to know that we've got a system that when we put in front of investors, they'll do the due diligence on it and go, yeah, okay, we can get behind that. So we can get behind you as founders. We believe that you've got the drive, the experience, and enough knowledge to build this going forward. But only as we get in the really experienced people in all the areas, whether that's commercial or in quality or in R&D, we need experience in-house in order to pull together the protocols, pull together the quality management system, and build our commercial strategy. So only when you get those in do you really get a refined model that really stands up to major scrutiny. So that's a continued development through the company that is always evolving.
So you develop the model, and of course it's constantly evolving, and in 10 years' time it'll evolve further, I've no doubt. But you've got to, at some point, say, go out with your bucket to try and get some money.
Yes.
And I'm curious about, because there must be some bootstrapping involved, or is it grants, or is it seed, or what is the source of money in those early days?
Yeah, so in the early days, it's a step-by-step process. So first of all, prove to us that the technology has the potential to do what you think it will do. So there's a mechanism called Commercialisation Fund with Enterprise Ireland, and that offers you approximately 2 to 3 years of funding to develop it to the point where you can test it in simulation models or preclinical models or cadaveric models. So those are the things that are going to give the clinical community and the investor community the confidence that your device can do.
Assurance, gotcha. Yeah.
So we did that, and we were very fortunate again to get funding from Enterprise Ireland. And
for what time frame?
So this was back in 2018, and we had it over a 3-year period, so 2018 to 2021.
Gosh, I should have asked you that question. When did the BioInnovate program, when were you involved in that?
Well, so we started it in 2017.
Wow.
And finished it in May, June 2018. And then we started the company in earnest in October 2021.
Right, okay.
And on the equity side of things and the investor piece, that's what enabled us, once we'd proven the technology sufficiently in a preclinical model by 2021, we'd already lined up investors to say, if we get good data here, are you interested in investing at this point in time?
Let me ask you two kind of basic, on the verging on the crass statement questions. Yeah. One not so much. I mean, how did you maintain motivation throughout, number one? And number two, I mean, how do you put food on the table in the meantime? Because it feels like seven years ish or whatever. It feels like a long time to me.
Yeah.
I'm very impatient by character. But tell me, how did you keep the motivation, and how did you put food on the table in the meantime?
So right the way throughout this, we're very fortunate in Ireland that that's a wage as well. I mean, it's not a significant wage, but it's a wage. So we are paid through the grant.
The grant, okay, gotcha.
That gives us a reasonable kind of living. And the motivation is clearly there because we've got a 3-year period. In our instance, it was a 3-year period to hit this milestone that is going to enable us to develop the technology. So my motivation doesn't come from proving proving people wrong or anything like that. It comes from the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is the belief that this technology will genuinely transform these patients' lives in a way that will have real meaning. So that never goes away. And through that, the grant period, nobody is really, nobody's on your back. Nobody's over your shoulder, making sure you've got to get this done now and you hit that timeline. We are motivated to hit those timelines because we are getting taxpayers' money to prove a technology can be beneficial to the patients. So for that period of time, I'm committing all of my energy to making it work.
Okay, so you have these incremental gate stages along the way, and if you're getting those wins at those stages, that can also push it along to the next one.
Absolutely.
Provided you've got a clear plan, I guess, in the first place.
Yes, I mean, the clear plan is everything. No plan goes according to plan, but if you don't have a mapped out plan with clear milestones, and the milestones that really have meaning and actually do shift the dial, then, what are you spending your time on? So You've got to ensure that you're honest with yourself about those, and you have to fail fast and fail early. Ask the difficult questions. If something isn't looking quite right, then you shouldn't carry on with that work. You shouldn't carry on with that technology.
Give me an example of failing fast and failing and learning from that and moving on.
So one example could be, let's say that one of our earlier tests with patient usability, for example, if that had resulted in majority of the patients trying to get access to it and they just couldn't do it. So they're just stumbling. It's very difficult. And it's not really showing that this is going to be easy to use independently. That's when we fail on that particular version of it. And then we have to pivot onto a new design because something in this isn't working. So really going there early on enables you to ask that difficult question is this going to have any failure further down the line? And we need to ask those questions as early as possible, pivot if possible. And if there's a game changer, so if you're getting feedback from your clinician saying, you know what, I just don't see it. I just don't see, I wouldn't adopt this technology if you offered all of this stuff. Then you have to ask yourselves, are you willing to put another 4 or 5 years worth into development when what you're hearing isn't really telling you that you should continue? So those are and there's a multitude of those questions that you ask yourselves as you go. And by being open to having the difficult questions or inviting them, that will de-risk your project significantly as you go.
And willing to let go, because I guess I can imagine, I mean, I even see it myself in my own creative times where I'm developing something and I really like it myself. And I kind of feel protective over it until somebody says, Alan, that's a load of whatever. And I get kind of hurts me. And I say, right. You get spiky and irritable about it, but you've got to let go, don't you?
Yeah. And I've never really, some people say it's your baby, and I don't see it that way. So I genuinely don't. This company is so much greater than the founders. You know, we've built so much support, so much of a network around what we are driving to go forward. This is a device and a treatment option that will ultimately make a big difference for the patients. Now, if any point on that journey there is a discussion to be had about this not going in the right direction, there's no commercial model here that will work, people aren't going to pay for it, the reimbursement codes aren't really suitable, all those kind of things, then you have to seriously stop and think to yourself, is this going to be a game changer? And one example I can give on that one, I guess, is you did ask about the commercial side of things. So we brought in a commercial VP of marketing and sales back in 2024. Now, a lot of companies might look, well, you're not even selling the product yet. Why would you do that? And we still got another year left. So that person will be in the company for 3 years. When they arrived, it very much was about how do we incorporate the commercial aspects of what we're trying to deliver for the patient experience into the device design. And that really is a true voice that is important to get us successful after you get clearance on the market. But if we look at that, the question about, are you willing to put yourself in a tough position to see, can you validate what you're doing? That was one of them. So this person was the VP of marketing and sales for the company that has 80% of the market share. And what they saw was during their time there, there were loads of these things that kind of thought, well, couldn't we do this? Couldn't we do that? Couldn't we do this? And the pain points for the patient and the clinician were constantly being observed by them. And when we met, there was definitely a resonance with all of that. So what he saw with us was we're actually tackling these things that he's been seeing over 16 years in this area, in this discipline. So when he joins us, it is honestly a hold your breath moment, because now we have someone who is so embedded in this space and has so much knowledge over the market, the patient needs, the clinical needs, all of that stuff, that when they arrived with us, they are going to be in their own head validating what we are doing now inside. So,
So, so,
they,
so Tim,
yeah,
I'm just on that point. So this guy has come from a company who has currently 80% of your market,
yes,
and I'm just, how do you protect the confidentiality of, I mean, the word leaking out? Because the company that is 80% clearly has deep pockets. And when they hear, if they haven't already heard about this, I mean, they're going to be rightly upset about it and probably thinking about, well, what do we need to do? So what are your thoughts around that?
yeah. I met Joe at a conference in San Diego in 2018 while he was working with Becton Dickinson, and the whole purpose of that was to talk to the current device companies about what we're trying to achieve. So it's we're always protecting our technology through patents and any kind of intellectual property that we can secure any any novelty within our own walls. So that's something that we ensure that we protect as strongly as possible. But we don't advertise it. Obviously, we're not going to scream and shout about it to the other companies that are developing the devices, but to let them know what we're doing. And to continue those conversations is important for a multitude of reasons, so that we can understand a little bit more about what they are doing in the future as well.
Mm-hmm.
But also, again, it's always the patient first. So
Right.
ultimately, we are here and demonstrating very clearly that we are going to grow as an Indigenous company in Ireland and scale, and we're putting everything in place to scale. But because the patient is always first, if along that pathway there was an opportunity for one of these incumbents, whether it's Becton Dickinson as the market leader or Merit Medical, who has the second market share, to acquire the technology because they can put it out to their sales force and get that out earlier. It's all about making sure that we get to the patient in the most expedient manner. Now,
Right.
that's not likely, and that kind of model has really shifted over the last few years. But ultimately, the conversations with them continue. We are now showing that we're developing something really meaningful that we've proven can work. And the next step now is to get it into patients next year. So it's an important part.
So Tim, back to funding.
Yeah.
You got to a certain point, but now then you needed is it seed investment or Series A, or what level were you at?
Yeah, so we were at seed investment in 2021.
Yeah.
So we worked with an angel syndicate in Ireland. Iris Investments led that round with Boole and the MedTech syndicate, along with Enterprise Ireland. And we also had High Net Worth in that round as well. So
Yeah.
that enabled us to kick off the company and really start to put the structures in place to grow Symphysis Medical.
And if it's an unfair question, please just push back.
Yeah.
Can you talk some numbers here?
Yeah, we can, of course. So that was 1.95 million.
Right.
And, it's kind of what I said earlier, is that there's so much you don't know about what you'll need to develop the technology, how long it'll take, how much it'll cost. So you pull together your best guess and you present that to an investment group. And there's a acknowledgement that this is worth investing in because this is a product that is worth getting to patients.
Right.
But ultimately, I think I'd go as far as perhaps 100% of my peers. It's taken a significant amount longer, and it's taken a significant amount of funding more than what was outlined right at the start. And that's the journey now that we go on with those initial investors that had certain expectations at the start, and continuing to communicate at board level and directly at investor level is key for the success of the company, for continued support.
And so you've got just under 2 million to start with. What's the size of the prize here? I mean, what's the market potential? While it's a new product, you're a disruptor. I appreciate it's not just like for like, but what do you think the size of the prize is in cash terms?
Yeah, I mean, what we're looking at is with the initial indication in the pleural space, it's about a $1.1 billion market. And if we look at the long term with the Ascites, you double it. So it's a significant market size. It's very well established. So in
Yeah.
our initial indication of malignant pleural effusion, the market is discovered, the reimbursement codes are in place, the systems are in place. And as I'd mentioned, because Joe has already been there, he's basically creating a system that streamlines everything that was or is in the current one, and improving on that patient experience piece.
I'm surprised that nobody has spotted this before you. Because if it's going 25 years, I mean, the rate of change with technology is hugely significant. It's growing exponentially. And we know the Cupertino in California is full of disruptors, guys with eggheads and pointy ears and glasses, not quite what you look like, that are just looking for things to disrupt. And it just surprises me that this is a 25-year-old technology that it's at, I mean, if you think about the sigmoid curve, it's at the top of the curve. It's at the maturity stage. And now it's in danger of falling into decline if, let's wave a magic wand, if your particular device turns out to be a fantastic disruptor and interrupts the market in that way. Why haven't they done it? Look, I don't expect you to answer it, but I'm just curious. I just find it curious that they haven't addressed it themselves.
Yeah, because they have so much of the market, the insights are really locked in to Becton Dickinson.
Yeah,
Whereas the market share with the others is significantly smaller, and they don't. I I would say that the understanding of how big the market is limited. So,
yeah,
and the appetite from the likes of Becton Dickinson to investigate on improvements in technological development is relatively low because what they are selling is doing so well. And then the other technologies are very much copies. You know, they are very much Me Too devices. And how do they make inroads into the market share where you have a very similar device that
yeah,
you're differentiating yourself typically because of patient and clinician support and perhaps price. So there's only so much that can happen there. So that
yeah.
jostle continues, and really understanding the needs of the patient
Yeah,
is missed.
I hear you. And, it's a cautionary tale for any mature business person listening in here. It really is. I mean, I can't help thinking about major iconic stories such as Nokia, such as Kodak, that were in that place at a point in time where they dominated their sector. I mean, take Kodak. They invented digital photography, but they put it back in the drawer
Yeah,
because they said it would never take on. And then along comes all the other guys. And then you also, similarly with Nokia, they were locked into the whole concept of hardware. And by God, do they have fantastic hardware? Do you remember? You could fire that 6110 through a window and it wouldn't break. The window would break, but the phone wouldn't break.
yeah.
But then along comes Samsung, or Android, and Apple, and they give them a right old kicking because they focus on software. And whatever the reasons are behind them for not changing, whether it was hubris, arrogance, or whether it was just, the quality of decision making, whatever. But it really is a cautionary tale for any of us listening in here. You've got to assume that no matter what product that you have, that wherever you think you are on that sigmoid curve, you might think you're in the ascent, like rising forward. But or maybe you need to ask yourself, could you be at maturity and in danger of falling into decline? It really is a question of getting ready to ride the waves, isn't it? Because this new technology that you've developed,
Yeah.
tell me this: how did you find the funders of 2 million quid? You got support from Enterprise Ireland and who did you say?
Yeah, the Iris MedTech
And,
Syndicate and Boole.
okay,
Can I just
so they support you in going out with your story,
Yes, yeah. Now,
right?
I do want to just brush on that piece on the market because I think that's really important to talk about. Is so this market is growing continually and is expected to grow at least 10% in the next few years. So it's the need for palliative care. the increased incidence of cancer and the understanding of the benefits of indwelling pleural catheters for these patients is constantly on the rise. And this is backed by data that Joe has over the period of time that he's worked with Becton Dickinson. So, we are able to join a market next year now that is on the increase, but it's that piece around the reason to believe. So there's reason to believe amongst the KOLs that this is where the technology is going next. So your question about why they haven't done anything before, we're Becton Dickinson is a $22 billion company, and we are this small little speck right here, right now. Until they start feeling the pain, they're not going to be doing anything. So, it's when we actually get on the market, prove the device in patients, and really start gaining that market share, and really showing that this really is transformative. So the other technologies will be left behind.
Gotcha. So where do you see, in terms of geography, clearly you're focused on hospitals, I suspect.
Yes.
Clinicians, but physically, what geographic markets do you see this being the big win for you?
The big win in a lot of cases is to prove yourself in the US market, because it's a homogenous market. When you unlock the regulatory pathway, you have market access across 350 million patients. Whereas in the EU, it's a much more complex regulatory pathway, and you have to access each geography separately, whether it's the UK or Germany, France, whatever it might be. So we need to prove ourselves in our hospitals that we've been working with now for the last 6 years in the US, and ultimately, we've developed this technology here in Galway. Our clinical lead, Dr. David Breen, has been instrumental in helping us develop the right product for the patients. So we want to see this on our doorstep. So we're not going to the US first because it's easier. We're going there because that's the right pathway in order to unlock the European market. If we came to Europe first, it would actually take us longer. So, we want to get this into hospitals across Ireland, across Europe, but we have to go through the US pathway first. It's kind of really well set up for it. And because our commercial lead really understands that market more than the rest.
And how much, give me a sense of how much a device will cost a hospital compared to what they're currently paying?
Yeah, so approximately the current device is around about the $600 to $650 mark. We are looking at an equivalent price, and that's for the insertion of the device in the hospital. And then you have the reimbursement for the device at home. So every time they drain, they have a little pack for a drainage, and that's anything up to about $75. So, that typically they'll be draining about 36 to 39 times. So you can see that the real revenue is driven through the kind of razor and blade model, where the drainage that is a significant part of your revenue.
So are you possibly then almost subsidizing the 600 quid machine in order to get the revenue on the replacements, on the refills?
No, I mean, that's got its own reimbursement code. So that will be paid for separately. But everything that we do with the reimbursement side is to ensure that we fall under the correct codes that maximize what we can do for the patient to be able to afford it and the hospital to be motivated to purchase it.
Right. It doesn't sound like a lot of money, Tim. I mean,
it is in the relatively low end area, but it's the volume. Of what you maybe call a procedure. If you're talking about a drainage being a procedure, then it's the number of those. So if you compare it to a transcatheter aortic valve replacement, you're looking, I think, north of €30,000. And that is on the very high end of things. We're obviously in that that lower cost.
Right. Tim, it's a fascinating story. I'm enthralled by it. It really is. And, the fact that you've got a higher level purpose, that there's a social impact, human impact, is a really, really great driver. But then it is a commercial business at the end of the day. But the learnings for anybody listening in about startups has been phenomenal. Tell me, what size are you right now? Just before we wrap up.
Yeah, so we're about 12 in Galway and one in the US, we're looking to grow the team. So I mean, that's very much our focus right now, is on our current raise. I mean, we've brushed on the investment piece, but we've raised 12 million euros to date. That's approximately 8 million from equity investment and 4 million through grant funding.
Amazing.
And we're raising approximately 3 million now, and that's to bring in more experience, to drive the company to the next level, to ultimately, grow the market in the US. So
talk to that next round.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you looking for for that next round?
Yeah, so we're looking for about 3 million, and that's to complete the development of the device. That's to have the boots on the ground in the US. That's to ensure that we have our distribution system set up, our 9-point patient program. So the patient experience is so key for the success. And this is where Joe Villanova comes in, because he's pulling together all his experience about what wasn't working optimally before. And that program needs to be executed, and we need additional support in the US through our Rhode Island branch. And ultimately, we've got the other potential areas that we can move into. So depending on how much we ultimately raise, we can build value in the company by looking at Ascites a little bit earlier. We can look at those adjacent markets. We can look at expanding into Europe a little bit earlier. So the funding is so key for us. And we need to prove ourselves first by getting into the first patients and getting that data. But we really are able to build a very strong company that has a platform technology that can really drive value in the company.
Have you already achieved FDA approval?
No, we're going through the process right now with our testing. So we've got, we talked earlier about usability. We have to we've completed formative testing for the clinician and the patients, and now we're doing summative testing. So taking all those learnings and now just completing a test to say, have they all worked? So those are happening in the next 6 months. We've got a preclinical completing in the next 6 months. And then we do all the stuff internally and with our manufacturing partner on design verification and validation. And then that goes all into a package that we submit to the FDA through a pathway called the 510K, substantial equivalence. And although it's called substantial equivalence, it still is a transformative device, but it's called substantial equivalence because the safety of our device is equivalent to the current. So there's no areas that are perceived to increase the risk to the patient. So that's all of the stuff that we need to be doing over the next 18 months to 24 months. And then we really go into our growth phase where we'll be looking at 10 to 15 million plus to really start growing the commercial aspect of the business and start taking market share.
And the current participants in the funding heretofore, are they all based in Ireland or are they international?
Based in Europe. So predominantly based in Ireland. So we have angel syndicates, and we've had really strong support from IRIS, the MedTech syndicate in Boole. We have high net worths, Enterprise Ireland, and EIT Health, which is a government body in Europe that that either provides grants or equity towards medical technologies. So they've been driving us up to this point, and now we need to be looking at those larger check sizes, bringing our current investors along, but also getting in the larger VC checks, along with some other grant funding that will be available in the next couple of years. And
fantastic. Well, I wish you
that. It'll help us a lot on our journey.
Great. I really wish you well with that. Tell me this, just to close out, how did a Welshman end up in Galway?
No, I didn't expect you to ask this now, and I don't know if I should be saying this because it shows the big divide between now and then. I moved here in 2000, Straight out of university, I did a business and an engineering degree, 50-50. And I did not know what to do next with my career. And a friend called me up and said, "I'm making a movie in Galway. Do you want to help produce it?" And
No way.
I packed the car, I drove to Galway, and the rest is history. I fell in love with Galway completely. I fell in love with Ireland. I knew a small bit about the medical device industry here in Galway, but not much. And then through all of the jigs and reels that happened over the subsequent 10 years, I ultimately ended up in something that I knew that I was born to do. This is my passion area. I have enjoyed the journey right the way through from start to finish, and all the ups and downs, all the downs. It's worth going through all of that because the joy I personally get from building a business that has real meaning is something that that I want to embrace on the journey as well as the destination.
Great. I presume you still wear the red shirt, however, during the Six Nations, do you?
Now, again, this is something I definitely shouldn't say, but red shirt 100% at international level, but at provincial level, I'm Connacht through and through.
Of course you are. Great. Tim, let's leave it there. It's been a real pleasure and well done, and congratulations on what you have achieved, and I wish you only the best of good luck and fortune going forward. Take care.
Thank you very much, Alan. It's been great chatting with you. Thanks a lot.
Good. Okay.